Okay, so today I'm going to be looking at Four Ascents for James Tenney by Michael Winter, specifically Rise 1, so the first movement of the four. Um, so this is a piece for variable instrumentation, although I guess it's like for large ensemble or electronics or a mix of instruments and electronics. Um, there's recording on YouTube. I believe it's just like electronics are used to compose that one. Although on his website it says it's been performed. So let me actually, so if we look at Four Ascents, yeah, so there was a performance in 2021 at the Royal College of Music, Stockholm, and this was on clarinet, piano, flute, tenor sax, and electronics and accordion. And then there was another performance in Pasadena, California in 2008. There's no credits here, so I'm assuming it is just an electronic realization of the piece at the Pasadena Armory. James Tenney, the dedicatee of this piece, is a American composer who experimented a lot with. Well, he was an early pioneer of electronic music, but he then experimented with translating electronic music to acoustic instruments. It was a lot of stuff that he did, like work in algorithmic composition, generative composition, um, experimenting with microtonality to some extent. Maybe not, well, yeah, maybe some just intonation stuff depending on the project. And then Michael Winter is an American composer, also based more on the West Coast, who was very inspired by James Tenney, who's written on James Tenney's music, and who composed this piece, which is it's sort of like mathematically constructed. So this first score, which is on tabloid paper, it's very graphic, is kind of one realization of the piece, right? And then and this is a realization of it as rise 1, and then rise 2 through 4. The relationships between the pitches are different, other things are the same. Effectively, there is a way to generate scores for those as well, which will look more or less like this one. Again, it's more of like the way that the pitches enter is different. Um, and the collection of pitches is different. Uh, the way the composer explains it here, um, so the horizontal axis is proportional to time, the vertical axis proportional to pitch. You have these stretches of time that are all kind of equal in size, and with each stretch of time you add another pitch until you reach like 16 pitches by the end. They're all built off of this fundamental. You can change the fundamental and thus transpose everything by any amount you want, but then you would just have to generate a different version of the score. And yeah, there's sort of like two ways you can read it. You can try to read these black lines, which are like glissandi, and try to hit each note in time, gradually glissing, or you can play what is represented by these light gray lines, I believe, and try to like just play um, the pitches as static notes that change with each like little segment of the piece. Now these can be played in any order, I guess. Like it doesn't really matter. You don't have to take one line. You can kind of just jump around as needed. Um, so that's more or less how it works. And you can see from based on the score, it's like very microtonal. Like you have to play these pitches accurate to the cent, and it does not fall within equal temperament at all. Um, so there's other aspects of the piece which are um, procedural. So for example, the general dynamic should go from soft to loud. Um, Also, the frequency of notes performed should increase. It should become more dense. as the piece progresses. Okay, so this appendix sort of explains how each rise is constructed. We're listening to the first one, the second one, and third and fourth all kind of use lists, I guess, of functions and things. I'm not terribly versed in mathematics, so I'm not going to be able to really explain these, but it's they're very concise. Like there's very concise ways of describing these pieces mathematically and encoding them to then be produced electronically. Just reading through this one earlier, I was not really able to make heads or tails of it, but um, it seems like there's a couple important variables. Some that have to do with time, some have to do with notes. So n seems to be a variable that has to do with like intervals, so like intervallic relationships between notes and the fundamental, right? The fundamental is just there and it starts the piece, but then all the other notes are related to it by a interval, right? So that is represented by n such that the first interval is n over n minus 1, I guess. Yeah, we have an open bracket here, which is confusing me. But you also have like C represents the current time. So if you imagine the whole duration of the piece and you're 42 seconds in, that's C is 42. V is the number of voices. So by the end of the piece, you're at 16. V equals 16. At the beginning of the piece, V equals 1. Um, so it's unclear to me if that is the number of voices at the current time or if that is used to designate specific voices. Whatever. And then T is the time of the final chord. So you can imagine the duration of the piece, say you want it to last 8 minutes. T would be 8 times 60 or whatever. And then you have more complicated variables made from these three. So S equals time per section such that one T over S epsilon Z. I don't know what that means necessarily. There's an equation, like the big equation here is for the glissando over time. The way it works is this function of C being the current time, right? So you should be able to plug in these variables and C and get results for, I guess, like where the glissando should be at in number of cents from the first pitch, I guess, from the starting point. So this function, I think, draws the lines, right? If you think about you enter at with a certain pitch, maybe that's V. This is like V equals 2, I don't know. And then you keep pushing the glissando as the current time goes up. As C changes, that function will change by a number of cents. So like from plus 12 cents to plus 19 cents. So the curve is very shallow here. It only went up 7 cents. Eventually, that second voice that starts on the D flat gets up to, like it's exponential, right? The curve. So it gets up to this C, 0, which is an octave above the fundamental. Yeah, what does the final chord look like? We got C, then the C an octave above, then the G plus 2, then the C above that. So it looks like a harmonic series. The fifth partial, the sixth partial, etc. So I feel like, yeah, there's a way of explaining this just with intervals. Maybe he started there. Maybe Michael Winter started with these intervals, and then he found out a mathematical way of describing it so that he could implement it into code. Then he produced the electronic version, and then he had to figure out a way to notate it, resulting in the notated score. I'm guessing that's how it came about. So yeah, really kind of interesting piece, all this other information is stuff that you need to construct Rise 2 through 4. Yeah, that's about all I have to say about Rise for James Tenney. Sorry that I don't have the expertise to really describe it. Um, it looks pretty fascinating. None of the other Michael Winter pieces we've looked at are this technical in their description. I trust that these equations are the shortest way to describe and most clearest and concise way to describe these pieces. I just don't have the knowledge to parse out the descriptions for you. Um, so that is what it is. Um, Please look at the recording I put in the video description and have a listen. And I'm excited to hear how this one sounds. It looks really intriguing. So yeah, let's give it a go. Okay, so yeah, I found this listening session really interesting. This was the first Michael Winter piece I ever heard, actually, which got me into his music. And it's a very interesting piece. I think this recording, now that I've given it a proper listen, is definitely electronics playing the whole piece. So the whole piece is mocked up with sine tones, I believe, and then there's an ensemble playing on top of that. So there's this oral cue that the musicians have to work with. I'm like 98% sure that's what's going on in this recording, and I think it's probably the most sensible way to perform it. I guess you could also feed the audio into headphones and have the performers like play from that. I don't think it's reasonable to expect performers to be able to play to the scent like that. I guess they could also play with tuners and look at like have a visual reference with the tuner to know where they're at. Um, but yeah, I like the pacing of this one. It's very, very slow, and I think it worked really well. And I really I would say my favorite moment was actually towards the end when you get the chord is like not quite a harmonic series yet. It's like a squashed harmonic series. That was a very cool sound. The opening was very interesting sounding too, but I've heard dozens of pieces that have the, you know, almost unison beating thing going on. So that's interesting, but it's been done a lot. Um, but this careful, controlled, like opening up into a harmonic series, I think is very cool. And the way it's illustrated in the score, it looks like it's exponential, but I think the idea is like that final chord is, it's shown the spacing is supposed to reflect music notation, right? So if I pull that up again here, so like that octave on the bottom is going to be appear wider than the fifth, right? So, but if you think about these as frequencies, I know it's more concerned with interval, the way this piece is constructed, but if you think of it as like frequencies, I imagine these glissandi are actually kind of linear. They go from a certain number of hertz up to this other number of hertz. So from the unison up an octave, you know. Uh, so anyways, that's my take on it. Maybe a spectrogram of this piece would look a lot different than this illustration. Or maybe it looks very similar. I'm not sure. Um, okay, so with that, I think we're going to listen to a piece by James Tenney next. So if this piece interests you, maybe it'll be interesting to see how it relates to the dedicatee of it. Um, yeah, that's Rise 1.